Are you still upset about not being able to present this watercolor set? Look, I will give you your very own set. There you go. In the wrapper and all. We've talked about this. You freeze up on camera every single time. Hello, Minders. Welcome back to the Mind of Watercolor. Well, my stage fright friend and I have been really enjoying showing you the colors in this set, what you can do with them, the power they're in, and we're not done. We've got more to do. Today, I'm actually going to go back to the greens a little bit and do a full painting for you. Well, actually, a full sketchbook page painting. But what I wanted to do, rather than just kind of show you all these greens that are possible, is I want to show you how I sometimes pick a particular color scheme, experiment with those colors, and then produce a painting from it. And it's just another chance to do a spontaneous painting. This is actually a green color scheme that I really, really love. And by the way, congratulations to Charlie O'Shields, 6 years on the World Watercolor Month. Oh man, what did I drip on my shirt? I don't know whether that's food or watercolor. Anyway, sorry. 6 years ago, Charlie O'Shields managed to get us our own month, July, World Watercolor Month. He sells some great gear over there. I've got a couple of the t-shirts, I've got a coffee mug, I've got some pencil pouches, and if you buy any of those products during this month, it's 100% of those will go to the charity. It's not Dreaming Zebra this year, it's something else for some reason I can't remember, but it's an art foundation geared towards children. So go check out his gear and his products, go check out his website, I'll have a link below. Go check out the artists that are doing content related to World Watercolor Month. Maybe you want to follow some prompts. He's got a daily prompt for the month. And if you're doing any watercolor content and posting on social media, use the hashtag World Watercolor Month. Or search up the hashtag and see what other people are doing. Anyway, again, congratulations, Charlie. Well, let's go look at some interesting greens and get to painting. All right, we want to do a little spontaneous painting here today, and I want to sort of show you a thinking process that I sometimes go through as I'm deciding on a color scheme. And you really do have to kind of put some thought to this. If you just start dipping in your palette randomly, and you can do that, that's fine for exploration. But if you just do that all the time, sometimes your painting will look like that. It'll look haphazard. When you want to get into doing a painting, especially with a limited palette, and I recommend you try that. Limited palettes are just great ways to explore colors and focus on color groups. Anyway, when you do that, you want to sort of have a strategy, have a plan, or at least know what you're going to be doing. So you can pick a star player or a featured color, or you can pick two. I'm going to pick one mainly, and that's phthalo green. The big, bold, brilliant phthalo green. What I want to do is two accent colors that will bend that color one way or the other. So let's choose good old ultramarine blue and our other green, azo green. Now, as we've talked about, phthalo green is pretty bold, brilliant, a bit unnatural in its intensity. So we need a complement or a near complement. Now what I'd like to do is choose a color or a complement that works with all of these colors. That's going to give us muted tones. And I want to paint in a very sort of muted, dusty green color. So what am I going to pick? Red iron oxide. And there's my color plan. So briefly, what's that going to give me? Well, let's mix it with the main color. It's going to, depending on the intensity, it's going to give me either like a hunter green. The more you add, the more olive that color becomes. Let's see if I can make sort of a gradient here. And you just get some really nice green browns. Now anywhere along the spectrum, we will use ultramarine blue. But I'm going to mostly be painting down here in these more muted tones. And I'm going to be bringing in ultramarine to sort of add that cool touch when I want it or need it. Likewise, we're going to get our azo green going here. And I'm not going to use a lot of azo green. I'm thinking that's going to be mainly an accent color that just comes into play to add some little shocks or pops of brighter yellow green when I need it or want it. And of course, you know, intensity wise, these can all mix to brighter colors. But I really think I want to stay down in here. This is a good chance for using like a butcher tray palette to pull it out and experiment. This is just, as you can see, just sort of splashing those colors around as if that were a tree and a landscape. Just seeing how they might get along in wet washes. But I love these dark sort of blue green, inky blue greens and brown greens. Again, this transparent red iron oxide and the phthalo just produces a nice olive drab. You can cool that off with the ultramarine. So there we go. That's my plan. That's my color scheme. That's a way in which you can proceed, and you can choose any color, you know, and decide to make that your focus. Pick a couple of accent colors, identify your complement or your near complement, and decide, you know, what that's going to get you and how you'll be able to use it. Oh, and just briefly, these are useful too, because the ultramarine and the transparent red iron oxide make sort of a Payne's gray. So you've got a nice deep. If you want to mix that into a nice cool deep, that would be a nice warm deep. You really don't even need anything like neutral tint. The red iron oxide and the azo green, this gives you a nice orange brown. But again, I mainly want to stay in this region, and we'll just accent with these other colors. And we should have a landscape that comes out with these sort of ranges right here. Let's get started. All right, so we're going to start off with some spatter spray, and then I'm going to paint into that. And that's a typical way I start, not always, but I like the way it makes the paint kind of creep and crawl. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about process. I've done that in a lot of other videos when it comes to spontaneous painting. I want to talk more about color. And as you saw in the little test samples that I showed you, the swatches, I'm going to use those 5 colors, or 4 colors, excuse me. Phthalo green is primarily the green. You're going to see the ultramarine blue get involved, like right there. Everything is going to be very kind of dusty and grayish or neutralish. And that's what I'm looking for. That phthalo green right there is a little bright still, but I'll be charging in other colors, you know, to sort of augment it and dull it down. Like right there. And the 2 primary factors here are the green, the phthalo green, and the transparent red iron oxide. It's not an exact complement, it's a near complement, so you get a lot of browning. But it just does, I think, some really nice things to phthalo green. And it's just one approach. And up there in the sky, there's a little more ultramarine. But that's really cool, I think. And I just want a few wisps. And as I usually do with spontaneous painting, I'm keeping it a vignette. But we're going to start bending these colors back and forth. And there I'm just tapping into some of those dots of spatter. Here I'm just wanting to blend out some of those drips a little bit so they're not quite so, you know, vertical. I wanted to do a vertical. I've been wanting to do a vertical for a while. Horizontal is usually the way I go, or landscape format, and that actually works best most times for video. But here we're getting much more olive in color, and again, that's just bending the mixture more towards the red iron oxide. It's as simple as that. It's just amazing to me what colors you can get. And when we get into these deeper colors, I'm adding more of the phthalo blue. And of course that works with the transparent red iron oxide to give you a Payne's grayish sort of hue. So it really excites me, and I hope it excites you. I want it to. I want you to really explore limited palettes and what they can do for you. Doesn't mean that you paint with just 4 colors all the time. No, what it means is that you're focusing. You're focusing and learning what those colors do. And you're designing a color scheme. And in the end, this has sort of an analogous feel to it, even though there is complements. Remember, analogous means next to each other on the color wheel, and complements means opposite the color wheel. Now you see I'm painting a tree over there to the right, and that's just getting a little more of the azo green involved. So I get a little more of a yellow green. So I'm bending this mixture back and forth in interesting ways. But because of the limited color scheme, it's all feeling very unified. What you saw there for a second, I don't know if you caught it, is me splaying out this brush. This is the Goat Synthetic blend from Levinson brushes, and it splays out with your fingers very well. It creates sort of a temporary fan brush, if you will. I just want to make a note of that. You can do that with just about any brush, but for some reason it works especially well with this brush. The base washes, they sort of painted themselves rather quickly, and I'm already into details. A lot of this is still fairly wet. The trees just slightly to the left of center have more of the red iron oxide color in them. That bigger sort of spreading tree I'm working on now has more of the yellow green or the azo green. And as I usually do in spontaneous paintings, I'm picking out edges and defining edges. A lot of this is still damp, so I'm trying to catch some of these areas where it will spread a little bit. Now that, what I'm painting now is I wanted a distant line of trees. So I mixed up a faint blue-green mixture, sort of a gray blue-green, leaning heavily to ultramarine, but has a little bit of green in it, just to ghost those trees in the distance as though they're in mist. And now I'm just applying some lifting with additional water so that I can pull out a few highlights and be left with highlights. I think mostly you can see where the colors go cool. You're leaning into the ultramarine blue. Where the colors go yellowish, you're leaning into the azo green. Where the colors go more gray or gray brown, you're leaning into the red iron oxide. That was a bristle brush, by the way, and I use it for lifting. So now I'm going to start lifting some highlights. And we're getting really down to smaller details now. A few little spires of more bare trees in the back. Adding some crisper, more defined foliage, just sharpening everything up. I'm just always amazed at this process, how much of a collaboration watercolor will give you if you let it. It really is like a duet, a musical duet. It's just amazing to me. So much here that watercolor painted that I didn't or wouldn't be able to in the same way. And I'm just getting some fine line brushes involved in here to add some ground detail. But I mean, look how lively the greens can look. And right now I'm just glazing in some warm tones. I have an overall cool to neutral scheme, but in the foreground area and some of those whitish highlight areas, I wanted to just glaze ever so slightly some warm tones, some azo green, some mixes with that and red iron oxide. And I mean, we're talking pale washes, just ever so slightly colored water. And there you are. That was a limited color scheme, a study in greens, and I think it turned out great. Thanks everyone. Appreciate you watching. Thank you so much, patrons, for your support. We'll see everybody in the next video.